by these words that nothing contained in this section except provision of clause H. So this provision specifically excluding clause H of section 43B. So how it impact on the deduction? Let us take next. Let us understand clause H of section 43B word by word in the light of the provision. And the first and foremost understanding, we should have what is a micro and small enterprise. Classification of micro, small and medium enterprise as per section 7 of MSMED Act 2006. Let me inform you that in section 43B there are various explanations provided. In explanation 4, it is specifically provided the definition of micro and small enterprise. In that definition, it is mentioned that the micro meaning of micro and small enterprise is defined as per section 2 of MSMED Act, and in section 2 of MSMED Act it defines as micro and small enterprise are classified as per section 7 of MSMED Act. So we are here discussing directly classification of micro, small and medium enterprise as per section 7 of MSMED Act 2006. Earlier the limit was different, but the government has amended the same by press release dated 1st June 2020. So let us discuss. There are classification of micro, small and medium enterprise as provided under section 7 of MSMED Act. Micro enterprise किसको बोलते हैं? See, enterprise engaged in manufacture or production of goods pertaining to any industry specified in the first schedule. Enterprise engaged in providing or rendering of service. See, these limits are for both. If the enterprise is engaged in manufacturing or production of goods or engaged in rendering of services, the limit for micro enterprise is investment in plant and machinery less than rupees 1 crore and turnover less than rupees 5 crore. That means what? There is a industry or enterprise which has investment in plant and machinery less than 1 crore and its turnover is less than 5 crore, then it will be defined as micro enterprise as per MSMED Act section 7. Similarly, for small enterprise, the same limit is 10 crore for investment in plant and machinery and 50 crore for turnover. That means small enterprise is defined as the enterprise having investment in plant and machinery less than rupees 10 crore and having turnover less than rupees 50 crore. The same shall be defined as small enterprise. Similarly, for the medium enterprise, the same limit will be 50 crore for the investment and 250 crore for the turnover. Now, for the removal of doubts, it is hereby clarified that in calculating investment in plant and machinery, the cost of pollution control, research development, industrial safety device, and such other items as may be classified by notification shall be excluded. See, this is very important. Investment in plant and machinery, उसकी definition में आपको क्या exclude करना है? तो 1, cost of pollution control. Second, cost towards research and development, cost towards industrial safety devices and such other items as may be notified shall be excluded. So while defining any enterprise as micro or small enterprise, and one has to look the definition of investment in plant and machinery, so that time these 3 expenses shall be included and that shall not be a part of investment in plant and machinery. It is further clarified that provision of Section 29 Capital B of the Industry Development Regulation Act 1951 shall be applicable to the enterprise specified in subclause 1, 2 of clause A of subsection 1 of this section. It is also important to note that provision of this clause shall be made applicable to only and only if the seller is micro or small enterprise. So in case of outstanding payment to any medium enterprise, no disallowance to be made and expense is allowable on accrual basis only. Like medium enterprise यहाँ पे cover ही नहीं है, so 43B clause H will not apply in case of any payment to medium enterprise, and the payment or amount payable to medium enterprise shall be allowable as deduction on the basis of accrual accounting system. Now let us understand definition of enterprise. As the clause H of section 43B talks about micro or small enterprise, it is crucial for us to understand what is enterprise. Section 2 clause E, small e of MSMED Act defines enterprise as enterprise means an industrial undertaking or a business concern or any other establishment by whatever name called engaged in the manufacture or production of goods in any manner pertaining to any industry specified in the first schedule to the Industry Act 1951 or engaged in providing or rendering any services or other services. See here we can note down 2 points. This definition covers enterprise engaged in the manufacture or production of goods. So manufacturing industry covered. Second, service industry engaged in providing or rendering of any services. So here who are not covered, there is a there are lots of FAQs over there for this. Trading concern. Under the definition, trading concern is not covered who are not engaged in manufacturing or service industry. If we this read definition, it is clearly saying that an enterprise can be any business entity in whatever form, partnership, company, proprietorship, but the one which is engaged in manufacturing or production of goods or rendering of any services. From the plain reading of this definition, it is crystal clear that benefits of section 43B clause H is not extended up to traders or trading enterprise. Now, the important, the crucial section or crux of the clause H of section 43B, section 15, which talks about time limit. Section 15 of MSMED Act 2006. See, we are discussing all the sections of MSMED Act. Why? Because under section 43B clause H and other explanations clearly talks about all the sections of MSMED Act. So whole deduction, whether it is allowable or not, completely depends on the language of the sections of MSMED Act. We are taking section 15. Section 15 talks about delayed payment to micro and small enterprise. This definition helps us to understand when the payments will be called for the delayed payments. Let us read it. I am reading bare language, where any supplier supplies any goods or render any services to any buyer, the buyer shall make payment therefore on or before the date agreed upon between him and the supplier in writing, or where there is no agreement in this behalf before the appointed date. provided that in no case period agreed upon between the supplier and the buyer in writing shall exceed 45 days from the day of acceptance or day of deemed acceptance. This section has displayed two situations that arise in normal course of business between buyer and seller. First one, if there is no agreement between buyer and seller, then buyer has to make the payment to seller, which is a micro or small enterprise. In that case, time limit of 15 days will apply. When there is a no agreement between buyer and seller, 15 days time limit will apply. If payment has been made to such micro or small enterprise after 15 days, then it will be treated as delayed payment under section 43 capital B clause H. Second situation, if there is an agreement between buyer and seller stipulating terms of payment, then payment has to be made within 45 days or days as mentioned in the agreement, whichever is lesser, whichever is earlier. So what does that mean? In this second situation, point one, there is an agreement between buyer and seller. Agreement mostly should be in writing, and one can say every time that should not be a separate agreement like new draft will be prepared, but I believe if invoice is there and in the invoice there are certain terms clearly mentioned in writing that payment should be made within 30 days or within 40 days, then also that should be treated as deemed agreement. So first condition, in second scenario there is an agreement between buyer and seller. Second, there is a time limit mentioned in that agreement. Say for example, time limit is mentioned is 40 days. As per Act, when there is an agreement, maximum time limit is 45 days, whichever is earlier. So in second scenario, if there is an agreement and there is a time limit mentioned in the agreement which is lesser than 45 days, then payment has to be made within such period mentioned in the agreement. Say for example, 40 days mentioned, as per Act there are 45 days. You have to make payment within 40 days as per agreement. If payment will be made on 41 day, then the same shall be treated as delayed payment, even if it is made within 45 days, because there is a specifically terms provided in the agreement. For example, let us understand this situation with example. Mr. Ram has purchased goods worth rupees 2 lakh from ABC Enterprise, which is registered as micro or small enterprise. Say it is registered. They have entered into an agreement where they have mutually decided to settle the payment within 60 days of delivery of goods. Mr. Ram is making payment in respect of such goods within 50 days. Will this expense of rupees 2 lakh will be allowable in the year of purchase? The answer is no. Why? Here agreement specifies the period of 60 days. Even though Ram is making payment in 50 days, which is earlier than stipulated period, but it doesn't satisfy the criteria of 45 days as mentioned in the section 50. So section 15 talks about that provision of section 15. I am reading for reference again. Provided that in no case period agreed upon between the supplier and the buyer in writing shall exceed 45 days from the day of acceptance. So in any case, terms of the agreement shall not violate proviso that should not exceed 45 days in any case. So what does that mean? Any payment in case of agreement is there in writing, if made beyond 45 days, will be disallowed as per section 15 of MSME Act. Now let us understand next section 2, clause B of MSMED Act 2006. We encountered the words appointed day, day of acceptance, and deemed day of acceptance in section 15 of MSMED Act. Now, section 2, small b of MSMED Act defines appointed day. I am reading definition as per section. Appointed day means the day following immediately after the expiry of the period of 15 days from the day of acceptance or the day of deemed acceptance of any goods or service buyer from a supplier. Section 2 small b defines appointed day. It is essential to understand appointed day to understand time limit of payment in different scenario. Now appointed day is immediate day following after 15 days from the day of acceptance, deemed acceptance of any goods or services. So 16th day from the day of acceptance or deemed acceptance. But what is day of acceptance? See, there are three kind of terms here: appointed day, day of acceptance, and deemed day of acceptance. So kindly understand this. This is very crucial. What is the day of acceptance? It is the day of actual delivery of goods or services, and not the day of invoice or the day of supply. काफी लोग ऐसा सोचते हैं कि डे ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस मींस व्हाट, तो बोले इनवॉइस रेज कर दिया पार्टी ने तो ट्रांजैक्शन हो गया, तो दिस इज नॉट द केस हियर. इवन party has supplied goods but you have not received that goods, so that till that time that shall not be treated as actual delivery of goods. So what I understand, actual delivery of goods means what? The goods on the day the goods will enter into your premises, like we are saying that goods will be inverted, so you have to maintain such kind of proof to prove day of acceptance, that is actual delivery of goods. And kindly note, the day of invoice or date of supply shall not be considered as actual delivery of goods if the delivery is made on different dates. If we talk about common situations arise in our normal business parlance, the buyer may not be satisfied with the quality or rate of the goods. In that case, in case of dispute regarding quality or rate, where such objection is made in writing by buyer to seller within 15 days of delivery of goods or rendering of service, the day of acceptance would be day on which such objection is removed by the seller. What does that mean? Suppose goods supply kar diye, then the buyer found it defective, then buyer has to intimate the seller in writing within 15 days from the day of delivery of goods or rendering of service. बायर को 15 दिन में इन्फॉर्म करना है कि आपके गुड्स डिफेक्टिव है और सर्विसेज में ये डिफेक्ट है इन राइटिंग, एंड he has to specifically raise this objection. Once this objection has been raised, then that period will start till the date the objection is not removed or resolved by the seller, and that should also be in writing. So that period will be excluded for the counting of limit under section 15 of 15 days or 45 days as the case may be. As this kind of questions arise many times in past few days, that goods defective आते हैं तो क्या करने का, so this is the answer of that question. Where there is no objection made in writing by buyer to seller within 15 days of delivery of goods or rendering of service, the day of actual delivery of goods or services would be taken as day of deemed acceptance. So now this is a definition of deemed acceptance. Kaise? When no objection raised by the buyer within 15 days from the goods delivered or rendering of service, then the same will be treated as deemed acceptance कि buyer को ये accept है. Now let us understand what is delayed payment as per section 15 of MS-MED Act, and let us see its consequences. If payment is made within time limit specified under section 15, see, you clear with the time. I hope you all are clear with the time limits. Time limit is provided under section 15. That is, if there is no agreement, 15 days time limit, and if there is a agreement, maximum time limit is 45 days, subject to time limit provided in the agreement. Agreement में अगर कम time दिया गया है जैसे 30 days, तो that should be considered as 30 days in case of agreement is there. So here we talks about that time limit. If payment is not made within time limit specified under section 15, then the compound interest payable shall be 3 times of bank rate notified by the RBI. That is provided under section 16 of MS-MED Act. What it says, अगर आप मतलब buyer is not making payment to the seller within time limit provided under section 15, then buyer is liable to make payment of interest as a compounding interest. See, what is compounding interest? And that shall be 3 times of bank rate notified by the RBI. Then next, section 23 of MS-MED Act provides, notwithstanding anything contained in the Income Tax Act 1961, amount of interest payable or paid by any buyer under or in accordance with the provision of this act shall not be for the purpose of computation of income under Income Tax Act be allowed as deduction. See, there was a question I have been asked yesterday or day before, that what if someone is making payment with interest as per agreement, so that both will be allowed on payment basis. So this is the answer of the question. आपको buyer को 1 lakh rupees का payment करना है. You are making delayed payments and then you are paying that payment with interest. Say for example 1,20,000. 1 lakh will be allowed as deduction in the year of payment. But that 20,000 interest, that is compounding interest paid by the buyer, is not at all allowable as deduction under any provision of Income Tax Act 1961, because that is compounding, that is in the nature of penalty, and the same shall be disallowed under section 37 subsection 1. So again, there is a reporting requirement by the tax auditor under the respective clause of 3CD that such kind of payment is in nature of penalty. We take some practical scenarios which we shall encounter soon while filing of income tax return or conducting audit of our clients. That time we can face this kind of practical scenarios or difficulties or some kind of questions. Scenario 1. If day of acceptance or deemed day of acceptance and date of payment fall in the same financial year, even if it is delayed payment, expense shall be allowed as deduction under this clause. See, let us understand with some practical example. Day of acceptance or deemed day of acceptance, say for example 1st April 2023, and date of payment, let us take 15th March 2024, but both falls in the same financial year. Then in that case, even if it is delayed payments. Obviously अप्रैल 23 का पेमेंट था, मार्च 24 में पेमेंट हो रहा है, almost after 11 months. So it is delayed payments as per section 15 of MSMED Act, because lapsed 45 days the maximum time period allowed, even though that will be allowed as deduction under this clause, because the payment has been made within same financial year, that is during 23-24, 2023-24. Second scenario, if day of acceptance, deemed day of acceptance, and date of payment fall in different financial years, but if it satisfies the criteria as per section 15 of MSMED Act, that is 15 days or 45 days, expense shall be allowed as deduction under this clause. What does that mean? Say for example, date of acceptance is 20th March 2024, 20 March 2024. The payment will be made on 3rd April 2024. So that is within 15 days. So for example, there is no agreement. So buyer has to make the payment within 15 days. Scenario is what? Acceptance date is within financial year 23-24. Payment is made after end of financial year 23-24. That is in April 24. But that satisfies the criteria of section 15. How? Because acceptance date 20th March 24, payment date 3rd April 24. So that is within 15 days, as assume that there is no agreement, and therefore that deduction expense is allowed as deduction under clause H of section 43B. So this is second scenario. In this both the scenario, deduction is allowable under clause H section 43B. Third scenario, if amount is outstanding to micro or small enterprise as on 1st April 23 and it is settled during the year, expense shall not be allowed as deduction under this clause. See, this is interesting. Why? Because amount is outstanding to micro or to MSME enterprise as on 1st April 23. That means what? On 1st April 23, outstanding amount pertains to purchases of earlier years. And if it pertains to purchase of earlier year, since the clause has come into effect from 1st April 23, any expenses booked in terms of micro or small enterprise would have already been claimed in the respective financial year. And therefore, in this scenario, clause H will not be applicable and the payment is made. There is no question of even claiming the payment. How? Let us take an example. See, I have made purchase in March 23, say for example 1 lakh rupees, and that payment is outstanding on 1st April 23. Now I am making payment in the month of May 23. What happens in March 23? Once you have purchased, you have already booked that purchase in the books as an expense following mercantile system of accounting. That means what? You already claimed that expenses in the financial year 22-23. And the balance is outstanding as on 1/4/23 is towards liabilities, towards creditors. So there is no question of claiming any deduction, and that transaction is not covered under clause H of section 43 capital B of the Act. Scenario 4, if payment is made in piecemeal, that means in part, where first part is paid as per section 15 of MSMED Act, but second part is paid in the next financial year, expenses shall be allowed to the extent of payment made as per section 15 of MSMED Act. Means what? There is a invoice, say for example, invoice of rupees 1 lakh you have received, you have made part payment, that is 50,000, following conditions stipulated in section 15, that is day of 15 days or 45 days as per as per the case, and you have made remaining 50,000 payment after that stipulated time period, then in that case only part payment will be allowed as deduction in that financial year, and remaining 50,000 will be allowed in the year of payment and not in the not during the financial year. So if the payment is made in fiscal, like concluding as in the year of payment with subject to the conditions fulfilled under section 15 of the MSMED Act. Scenario 5. If a day of acceptance, deemed day of acceptance, and check issue date are within section 15 of MSMED Act 2006, however, check clearance date is beyond appointed date, expense shall not be allowed as deduction under this clause. How this will happen? Let us understand. Say for example, day of acceptance is 15th March. Check issue date. Say for example, there is no agreement. Acceptance date is 15th March. So buyer has to make the payment within 15 days. So by end of 30th March, buyer has issued check on 20th March, and there is a error on the part of the seller, like seller has misplaced the check, and later on 1st April, seller found that this check remains to be deposited. So he has deposited the same on the 1st April, that is after 15 days stipulated time. In that case, what happened? That expenses shall not be allowed as deduction, because expenses, when it will be allowed as deduction, that on the date of payment. Payment date means what? The payment should be debited in the bank account. So that date on which payment is debited should be treated as date of payment in such kind of cases. So that jugglery cannot be done like at the end of the 15 days, you will write the check of 15 or 20 days later, or someone may write the check in back date. So that kind of juggleries shall not be entertained under this act, and the expenses will not be allowed as deduction during that financial year. That it will be allowed in the year of payment on the day on which the bank account will be debited. Now, reporting in tax audit report and treatment in income tax return. There is a reporting requirement in tax audit report under clause 26. See, at present, there is no mention of clause H because it is applicable from this year only, that is AY 24-25. But in the last utility, in the last form 3CD, there is a clause 26 wherein all other clauses of 43B such as A, B, C, D, E, F up to G, there is a requirement, a reporting requirement under this clause, clause 26 for all these clauses. So I presume that for clause H also the reporting requirement under this clause only. It is also important like how that how that clause will work. Like in section under clause 26, let us once again see here clause 26 capital B was incurred in the previous year and was paid on or before due date of filing. So here this won't come because for clause H that liberty is not allowable, that has to be paid within time limit as per section 15 of MSMED Act. So under B small b, not paid on or before the aforesaid date. Aforesaid date means what? That is due date. So let us assume the utility might be changed, and that clause C or some other clause will be inserted here that will be specifically mentioned regarding disallowance of clause H or reporting of clause H of section 43B. Also, under clause 22 of tax audit report, there is a clause amount of interest admissible under section 23 of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development Act 2006. So here the interest which has been paid by the buyer on delayed payment as per section 15 of MSMED Act, that interest is not at all allowable and auditor has to report specifically under clause 22. Under clause 22, it is also interesting here, not only micro or small, but that interest paid to medium enterprise is also not allowable. That wording clearly shows this. Reporting in tax audit report, other tax treatment. So let us take now ITR. In part A, other information, point 11, in ITR form, I guess I am taking this ITR 3. So maybe according to ITR form, some clauses may be different. Any amount debited to profit and loss account of the previous year but disallowable under section 43B. So here there are various clauses A, B, C, D, D, A, E, F. So here accordingly it may be separate clauses may be inserted as clause G or clause H for the disallowance or for the reporting purpose, because nowadays when CPC is processing the return, it automatically consider this disallowance and consider this allowability of deductions claim under 43B depending on the reporting of 3CD as well as ITR form. Another reporting in the ITR is under Schedule BP, that is computation of income from business and profession. There is a point 80 wherein the reporting is there. Any amount debited to profit and loss account of the previous year but disallowable under section 43B. See here, the amount debited to profit and loss account means what? Payment made to the seller beyond specified time limit that will be covered under disallowable under section 43B. But here interest is not covered. Interest will be covered under the head of penalty, that interest paid under section 23 of the MSMED Act. Based on the above understanding, we can also include the scenario where the supplier is not registered at the time of supply but get registered subsequently before receiving payment shall also not be avail benefit of this provision. When earlier we have seen some of the scenarios, one more scenario is there. What happens at the time of supply? Seller who is not registered with MSMED Act and after date of supply, like seller ne in the month of April 23, he has sold some goods to the buyer. Then in the month of June, he gets registered himself under MSME and that payment is outstanding on the day of registered, that is in the month of June. Then buyer make the payment in the month of July, that is after seller is getting registered. So in that case what happens, whether such payment will be triggered by clause H of section 43B. A question arises, how a buyer would know the status of supplier under MSMED Act unless informed by or inquired by the buyer. यहाँ पे होता क्या है, all the time buyer is not aware that whether seller is registered or not. So in that earlier scenario we discussed, in that case when seller supplied the goods and at that time, if he is not registered with MSME, then in such scenario, that transaction shall not be triggered with close edge of section 43B. That is my opinion. But the important question is how the buyer would come to know. Then there is a solution, like buyer has to check Udyam registration. Udyam registration of the seller. Buyer can ask directly to the seller first of all whether he is registered or not. But if the seller not answering or delaying due to any of the reason, then buyer before making the payment and can check the Udyam registration of the seller. And if seller is registered under Udyam, then he has to also mention that number on the invoice. Because this difficulty earlier was conveyed to the government, and that's why it has issued an advisory wide office memorandum considering advisable that micro and small enterprise should mention EM number on relevant documents like invoice, supply, order sheets, etc. So this is the advisory issued by the government that every seller registered under micro and small enterprise should mention EM, enterprise memorandum number, EM, that is called EM number, on relevant document like invoice, bill, supply order sheet, etc. From that number, you can check whether seller is registered under Udyam or not. It is not only enough to obtain the Udyam registration, but necessary to print the said number on the tax and other invoice and letterheads, etc., along with the GST number, and also include a declaration to that effect. Its validity similar to that declaration under GST law. This will automatically cover the supply for 15 days limit, except where a written agreement is there for the time limit of a payment. As a understanding to the above clarification advisory, it seems to absolve buyer and its auditor for the disallowing amount or disclosure of dues to the supplier covered under MSMED Act if the Udyam registration is not mentioned in the tax invoice or other correspondence to the buyer. So, what does that mean? क्लैरिफिकेशन एंड एडवाइजरी जो गवर्नमेंट ने इश्यू की है, इट इज रिजॉल्विंग मैक्सिमम इश्यूज रिगार्डिंग to check the whether salary is registered or not, and its status of MSME, like when it registered, before supply, after supply. So all that points can be covered from the registration details itself. And for that, government issued that advisory that every seller has to mention that entrepreneur memorandum number, that is EM number, on the invoice or other letterheads, etc. Now we'll take some FAQs. Question 1: whether provision of clause H of section 43B is applicable to unregistered micro or small enterprise, even if it meets criteria of investment in plant and machinery and turnover. The answer is no. Why? See here, word is unregistered. So what is the primary condition? Primary condition is every person who wants to avail the benefit. Person means seller, जिनको जल्दी payment चाहिए, because clause H 43B talks about that only. So seller who wants early payments and want to obtain the benefit of clause H of 43B has to compulsorily get registered first of all under Micro or Small Enterprise Act. If it is not registered, and even though it meets the criteria of investment in plant and machinery and turnover as specified in that section 7 classification of micro, small and medium enterprise, answer is specifically no. If it is not registered, then irrespective of criteria achieved about investment and turnover, that is not applicable and that he is not entitled to take that benefit. This is this both that supplier here we want to just discuss that supplier meaning. Supplier means a micro or small enterprise which has filed memorandum with the authority referred to in subsection 1. See, section 15 we have already discussed. It talks about time limit, but how to get registered and who will be treated as registered supplier. This is the definition. Supplier means a micro or small enterprise which has filed memorandum with the authority referred to in subsection 1 of section 8 and includes National Small Industry Corporation being a company registered under Companies Act 1956. What is important? To get registered with MSME, you have to file memorandum with the authority. Authority means MSME. So once you file the memorandum, you will be treated as registered supplier. There is no such definition of registered enterprise. There is a definition of enterprise under MSME Act, but how we will identify? So that is from the definition of supplier. Supplier किसे कहते हैं? Who has filed the memorandum with the authority. So you have to check this one, that whether seller has filed the memorandum with the authority, then and then only he will be treated as registered under MSME Act, and only in that case he is eligible for the clause H benefit. Question 2. If supplier is engaged in both, that is trading as well as manufacturing, in that situation, whether section 43BH is applicable for dues outstanding to that supplier? The answer in this situation, section 43B clause H can be made applicable for the dues outstanding to such supplier to the extent of supplies have been received as a result of manufacturing activity or service availed. See, some enterprise may be engaged in two kinds of business. Like one is separate unit that is totally in the trading, and one is in the manufacturing. So in that case, what happens? This clause will apply to the dues of manufacturing unit only and not to the trading. So in that case, our answer is that can be made applicable for the dues outstanding to such suppliers to the extent supplies have been received as a result of manufacturing activity or service. If there is a service industry, then to the extent of service availed. So that is not applicable to the trading activity or to the dues pertains to the trading activity. Question 3. Can disallowance be attracted under section 43B clause H for dues outstanding in relation to capital expenditure? Answer is, see, section 43B reads as notwithstanding anything contained in the any other provision of this act, a deduction otherwise allowable under this act in respect of. That means what? It is clear from the section 43B language that that can be made applicable only to those deductions which is otherwise available under the Income Tax Act. Capital expenditure is not at all allowable as an expense, as a revenue expense under Income Tax Act, and hence no disallowance will be attracted in case of section 43BH for dues outstanding in relation to the capital expenditures. This question is raised many times in last few days, and we have also discussed among the professional brothers. So this view is very clear. See, माइक्रो एंड स्मॉल एंटरप्राइज में क्या है, उनको लिक्विडिटी चाहिए. अभी लिक्विडिटी चाहिए तो दैट रिलेट्स टू द रेगुलर इन द रेगुलर कोर्स ऑफ बिजनेस. सो बेसिकली this close edge includes the payment to be made towards the goods or services. Goods means in the regular course of business, which is in the nature of purchase, that someone is engaged in supplying capital goods. But if you are treating that transaction as in your books as a capital asset, then you are not covered under this clause section 43b close edge. That is what our interpretation. Because see, this whole clause and section depends and talks about deductions to be available from the income under section 28 of the Income Tax Act. So if you are not going to claim such expense from the income in the computation of total income, then clause H of 43B will not attracted in that case. See, that means what? You have the buyer bought the machinery around 1 crore, and if there is a payment outstanding at the end of the year, or that is not paid within that time period of 1545 days, but that period will not apply in such cases because that is not recorded in the profit and loss account. That will be recorded under the schedule of fixed assets, and that is capitalized. So conclusion is in this question, my conclusion is if expenditure is in capital nature and payment is not made as per criteria laid down under section 15 of MSMED Act, even though that payment shall not be disallowed, I mean that is not a question of disallowance, and of course that will not affect the depreciation of that portion. That is my humble view. How, question 4, how year-end provision will be dealt in for the disallowance under 43BH? Answer is section 15 and section 2 small b of MSMEDX 2006. Payment must be made within 15 or 45 days from the date of actual delivery of goods or service. Hence, for any provision made for which actual delivery goods or services doesn't taken place till the end of the year, no disallowance can be made under section 43BH. That means what? If someone has made the provision of some expenses regarding purchase, someone has made the provision expenses towards goods or services, but actual delivery has not taken place, like goods has not delivered actually or services has not rendered. If such transaction has not happened, then no question of disallowance under 43BH, because that we don't need to see that criteria of 15 or 45 days from the date of actual delivery, because actual delivery is not taken place in this case. Another question is, what if buyer makes payment to the supplier after 15 or 45 days, but before filing of return of income for that financial year? See, here it is very clear, as per amendment made in proviso to section 43B, the benefit of the first proviso, the benefit of close edge will not be available, as the first proviso for due to micro and small enterprise. Hence, though payment is made before filing of return of income, deduction can only be claimed in the year in which actual payment is made and not in the year of accrual. That means what we have discussed in the first slide, that under section 43B, clause A, B, C, D up to G, all such clauses talks about allowability of deduction on the payment basis, and if such payment is made before due date of filing of return. So there is no such time limit of 15 days or 45 days, and there is no applicability of MSME. In clause H, there is specific application of relevant provisions of MSMED, wherein this 15 days or 45 days time limit is mentioned. And then after H, there is a proviso inserted that is effect from first AY 24-25, wherein it is clearly mentioned that this benefit of payment before due date of filing of return will not be allowed in clause H, that is specifically mentioned. So, concluding that if payment has been made after 15 or 45 days, as the case may be, but before due date of filing of return, falling under clause H, then such payment will be disallowed for that financial year which belongs to, and that will be allowed in the year of payment and not in the year of expenses incurred. Question 6. Disallowance under 43BH can be attracted for the assessee opting for the presumptive taxation. See, it's a very simple and logically 43B is not applicable to the assessee opting presumptive taxation. Hence, no disallowance can be made in such cases because you are not going to claim any expenditure, and therefore that is not applicable. Key takeaways of these meetings, webinars on close edge of section 43B. Number 1, the provisions of these sections applies to all the persons irrespective of audit or turnover criteria, whether it is a proprietorship, individual, partnership firm, company, LLP, etc., who purchases goods or services from the registered micro or small enterprise. So, number 1, these provisions clause at section 43B applies to all the assessees irrespective of category, irrespective of audit and turnover, if the seller is registered under micro or small enterprise. So that is another condition, that seller should be registered under micro or small enterprise. If expenses incurred during financial year and paid in the same financial year, irrespective of the time limit, it is allowed. So that scenario, what we have already seen, that expenses incurred during financial year 23-24, like buyer has to make the payment to the seller during this year for the purchase made during this year, and it is paid within the financial year, that is before the end of the financial year, then irrespective of the time limit provided under section 15, the same is allowed. Again, practical example, purchase is made in the month of June 23, payment made in the February 24, that is allowed. पेमेंट भले ही 15 और 45 डेज के बाद हुआ है बट विद इन फाइनेंशियल ईयर हुआ है, सो दैट इज क्लियरली अलाउएबल. If expense is incurred during financial year and paid in next financial year within time allowed, it is again allowed as deduction in the financial year in which it is incurred. Means what? Payment, expense is incurred in the financial year 23-24. Say for example, incurred in March 23. Payment is made in next financial year, that is called 5 April 20 March 24 में expense incurred हुआ है, payment has been made in the 5th April 24, so after end of financial year, that is after 31st March. यहाँ पे क्या होगा, if there is an agreement तो 45 days का time limit अलग होता है, so within 45 days है, and even after end of the financial year है, even though it is allowed as per the conditions laid down of section 50, and it is allowed as deduction under clause H of 43B. If expense is incurred during financial year and paid in next financial year beyond time limit allowed, it is disallowed and allowed in the financial year in which payment is made. Expense is financial year, particular financial year में incur हो गया and next financial year में payment हो रहा है. Beyond time limit allowed means what? Time limit कौन सी देखनी है? MSME है. That is 15 or 45 days. 15 days in case of no agreement, 45 days in case of agreement. So during the year, during financial 23-24 incur हुआ, payment हो रहा है in the next financial year, that is 24-25, and payment हो रहा है after that 15 or 45 days, then such expenditure will not be allowed in financial year 23-24, but that will be allowed in financial year 24-25. Interest on delayed payment is disallowed. That is governed by section 23 and that has to be reported under clause 22 of the 3CD and that will be disallowed under section 37 of the Income Tax Act as a because it is in the nature of penalty. There is a word of compounding interest, so that is treated as penalty nature. And section 23 of MSMED Act clearly provides for this disallowance because the wordings are, see, it looks like it overrides the all provisions of Income Tax Act for the purpose of this disallowance. वहां पे वर्डिंग ऐसा है, notwithstanding anything contained in the provisions of Income Tax Act, this is not allowed as deduction and the same shall be disallowed. That interest made on delayed payments. Now we are just taking two case laws recently held by the Supreme Court. There are see 43B clause H. What we have seen, I have seen this is the first time like there is a clause on which whole session or seminar or webinar are ongoing everywhere. Till the time we have seen that particular section has been introduced and there are various clauses and there are ambiguities and for that there are various sessions or discussions. But this is interesting, there is a single clause on which there are number of issues that may be arise in upcoming days or upcoming years. So I hope you all are clear with the explanations and provisions of the clause H of section 43B and provisions of MSMED Act which we have discussed here. If anyone has any questions, then you can send me in writing or if time permits later on, then we can take it. I am just discussing now two case laws, very important case laws of Supreme Court. The one is Checkmate Services Private Limited. Here the issue involved regarding employees' contributions towards provident fund and other funds that has to be deposited within the time limit provided under relevant act. See, you all are aware that there is a Gujarat High Court decision in case of Gujarat State Road Transport Corporation GSRTC जो ST बसेस यहाँ पे गुजरात में चलते हैं, उनके केस में गुजरात हाई कोर्ट ने फर्स्ट ये डिसअलाउंस अपील किया था that employees contributions towards PF or ESI if made after time limit provided under relevant act. Relevant act means PF Act or ESI Act. So that 20 to 15 days time limit or 20 days time limit apply respectively for PF and ESI. वो time limit के बाद अगर payment होता है, then that should be disallowed and that will be treated as income in the hands of the employer. This is very harsh, but see, the issue reached to the Supreme Court and Supreme Court has also observed and decided against the SSE, that is in the favor of revenue. So now you have to be very careful and cautious while doing the audit, and you have to inform the client as well that every contribution towards government or government authority towards PF and DSI belongs to employee, should be paid within time limit within time limit provided under respective act. This will not apply to the employer's contribution. Employer's contribution, the provisions of section 43B will remain continuous, and the deductions will be allowed if the employer's contribution paid before due date of filing of return. Let me explain this case law in little bit detail. The Supreme Court observed in this case that Section 43B was introduced so that deduction which were otherwise permissible were being claimed on mercantile basis would be allowed in certain cases on payment basis. Thereafter, Section 36(1) 5A 224(10) and second provision 43B were also introduced. Here, Supreme Court observed that Parliament intended to retain the separate character of employees' contribution and employers' contribution to the welfare fund based on the use of different language in the statute. Amount received from the employees, whether is deemed to be income of the employer, this amount is held in the trust by the employer, underlined by the condition that has to be deposited on or before due date. The deduction under section 36(1) 5A of that can be claimed on payment of employee share to the relevant fund. See, here in sum up, what we need to understand, there are two kinds of contribution: employer's contribution, employee's contribution. Employer's contribution is governed with section 43B on payment basis, irrespective of that 15 days criteria of PF and DSI Act. So Supreme Court has held that only, that in case of employer's contribution, you are eligible if you will make the payment even after that due date of respective act, but before due date of filing of return, you can claim the deduction under section 43 capital B of the act. But in case of employee's contribution, you need to make payment within 15 days or 20 days respectively as per PF and DSI Act, and then only you can claim that deduction under section 36 subsection 1 clause 5A, clause Roman 5A of the Act. Supreme Court concurred with the Gujarat High Court's finding in the taxpayer's case that non-obstant clause would not in any manner dilute or override the employer's obligation to deposit the employee's contribution to PF and DSI Act if it is not deposited on or before due date. See, why I am taking this case law of PF and DSI? Because still I have received many queries number of times that, sir, in this case there is a assessment has already been done and there is a disallowance of PF and DSI, whether we should prefer and appeal or not. See, now there is no meaning of prefer and appeal before CIT appeal or tribunal, because Supreme Court has ruled out this issue in the favor of revenue, that employee's contribution should be allowed only if payment has been made within time limit allowed under respective act. So make it clear that if the payment is delayed, then the disallowance is confirmed and the same is treated as income in the hands of the employer. The another case law we are discussing, that is Acquired Technologies Limited versus Commissioner of Income Tax. Here the explanation 3C of section 43B has been discussed in detail. What happens in this case? Appellant filed a return declaring loss for the AY 96-97. In that return, appellant claimed deduction of 2 crore 84 lakh under 43B based on the issue of debentures in lieu of interest accrued and payable to the financial institutions. See, you all are aware that if interest to be paid to the NBFCs, then that is allowable on the basis of, on the payment basis, and that is governed by 43B. So here the issues related to that only, that what appellant did, appellant has claimed the deduction under section 43B on issue of debentures in lieu of interest. Interest पे करना था, in that lieu डिबेंचर इश्यू किए गए, that interest was payable to the financial institution. इंस्टीट्यूशन ने क्या किया था, असेसी को, इंस्टीट्यूशन को, there is a, say for example 10 lakh is outstanding interest payment to be paid to the NBFC. इंस्टीट्यूट ने क्या किया, उनको उतने ही अमाउंट के डिबेंचर इश्यू कर दिए, और से फॉर एग्जांपल ज्यादा किए, से फॉर एग्जांपल 15 लाख, बट दैट अगेंस्ट द आउटस्टैंडिंग लायबिलिटी ऑफ द इंटरेस्ट. सो यहाँ पे क्या हुआ, एपेलेंट ने क्लेम किया कि वी हैव मेक द पेमेंट एंड इन दैट ईयर वी आर क्लेमिंग डिडक्शन अंडर सेक्शन 43B, बिकॉज डिबेंचर आ गए उनके पास, डिबेंचर इश्यू हो गए, तो अभी लायबिलिटी बुक्स में तो नलीफाई हो गई. So on that basis, appellant has claimed that deduction. Here, finding of the Supreme Court is important. I am reading the finding. The question decided in this case is far removed from the question to be decided in facts of the present case and has no application to this fact whatsoever. The question in the present case doesn't depend what can in law be stated to be debenture, or whether it is convertible or non-convertible, or payable immediately or in the future. The question in the present case is only whether interest can be said to have been actually paid by the mode of issuing debentures. On the facts of this case, this court found that explanation 3C was squarely attracted, in that outstanding interest had not actually been paid, but instead a new credit entry of loan now appeared, bringing the case within the express language of section explanation 3C. This is far removed fact of the present case, which were not adverted at all to this judgment. Consequently, judgment is also distinguishable and wouldn't apply. Consequently, important judgment of the High Court are set aside and order of the ITT is restored. In short, यहाँ पे उन्होंने इशू असेसी के फेवर में डिसाइड किया that interest was outstanding to be paid to the NBFC. In lieu of that, NBFC issues the debenture. So by that mean, appellant claimed that interest portion as deduction under section 43B. Supreme Court held that explanation 3C is squarely attracted, and accordingly that deduction claimed by the appellant is allowed. So we are ending up this session here, and I request Ashish ji to take it further.
Thank you so much. We have few questions in the chat box. I would like to ask Shivam to address the relevant questions if there are any.
Yes,
Please.
sir. The first question is that traders whether opting 44AD or not opting 44AD is section 43BH applicable or not?
See, in this case, it is not applicable as per my view, because word traders is itself not covered in the definition. Manufacturer or service provider, these are only covered, and that's why it will not apply.
Second one is expenses booked at the end of the financial year on accrual basis for which no bill is received before 31st March 24. What shall be the appointed day in such cases?
Shivam, can you repeat the question?
Expenses booked at the end of the financial year on accrual basis for which bill is not received before 31st March 24. what shall be the appointed day in such cases?
See, in that case, what happens if you have received the goods? Though, see, invoice date is not material here. If you have received the goods, so actual delivery of goods will be treated as that acceptance date. डिलीवरी हो गई है, इनवॉइस बाद में आया है, so that is fine. So you have to
Okay.
calculate the period of that limitation from the delivery of the goods.
Okay. Next one is that what about outstanding dues as on 31st March 23, which consist of earlier years, that is of financial 23 or 21-22, whether allowable or not allowable under section 43BH.
In this case, section 43B clause H is applicable from 1st April 23 onwards, that is for AY 23-24. So all dues before that period will not be covered under this clause, and that can be claimed. And in fact, that example has already been taken, that purchases have already booked in that year on the mercantile basis. So expenses already been claimed. So there is no question of attracting clause H of 43B here.
Next is traders are excluded from the provision. What will be the situation when the assessee is getting goods manufactured outsourced on job work basis and has no machine in his own books? It will be treated as a trader or manufacturer.
See, for that classification provided under section, we have to look. Therein, it is clearly provided two criteria: investment in plant and machinery and turnover. And word is and. So, if this both the conditions satisfied simultaneously, then only it will be treated as manufacturer under MSME, and then only that clause H of 43B will be attracted. So, in your case, if manufacturer is outsourcing because it has no plant machinery, then it will not fall under this clause.
Okay. Important. As per agreement, buyer show only books to pay seller or show what to do in case of same.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Wait.
I think the
I
question is
I
not
think
complete.
question is not completed.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So question all completed. No any other question from the any participant.
I would like to ask Secretary Jaikishan Pamnani to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, President Sir, for allowing me to propose the vote of thanks. So good evening, everyone, and it's my privilege and honor to propose the vote of thanks. I thank you, the All Gujarat Federation of Tax Consultant, for associating with us for this webinar. So I extend my deepest thanks to each and every one of you for gracing us for this wonderful webinar and gracing us with your presence today. Firstly, I would like to thank our today's learned speaker, C.A. Sulabh Pasha. He is my dear friend also. So the topic was a very hot burning today, and it required a great seminar or webinar for the same. And Sulabhji, thank you for accepting our invitation for the same, and you have shared a great knowledge with us today and made this webinar an informative one. I would also like to express our gratitude to all the participants who have joined us from the Income Tax Bar Association and AGFTC in a great number. So thank you everyone for your enthusiasm and eagerness to learn. The way you have shown your eagerness to learn today, I request and look forward to welcoming you to our future events of the association. So we are upcoming with the GST series starting from 9th February. We are upcoming with GST series of 8 lectures, which will be conducted every Friday and Saturday, and the session will be of 2 hours each. You can see the schedule on your screen. Every Friday and Saturday, this will be conducted from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. So I hope you will join us in the great number the way you have joined us today. And I assure you that you will learn a great learning in this GST. Also request you to register yourself for the 5th edition of Two-Day Text Conclave 2024, which will be conducted on 15th and 16th March. So do it fast. And once again, thank you all for your unwavering support and participation. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Sulabhji.
Thank you, Ashish ji. Thank you, Jai Kishan.
Thank you.
Shivam, you can close the meeting. Sir, please accept our certificate of appreciation. We will be delivering you the physical one also very soon.
My pleasure, Ashish ji. Thank you so much for the
Thank you, Ravi
opportunity.
bhai. Ravi bhai,
Yes, Ashish bhai.
thank you. You were saying something?
No. Excellent lecture and a very detailed taking. But
Thank you.
I think I was mute, so it cannot be loudly said. Thank you very much for unmuting me. And excellent, you have done very detailed work. Excellent.
Thank you, AGFTC and IT Bar for the opportunity. Thank you once again.
Yes. Thank you.